Dear students, today we are going to discuss about the paper fifth, that is, literature for human values. And in literature for human values, we are taking the block number third. The block number third, as you know, has Khalil Gibran's very famous book known as The Prophet. The Prophet is a very famous book, and it has got a collection of the ideas on various subjects related to human life. And it is written by Khalil Gibran. Khalil Gibran was a very famous writer, and he is popularly known because of his ideas on human traits and human personality and the topics related to human behavior. First, we would like to see the internal part of Khalil Gibran and his life, how he became a writer and what were the important features of his life. And then we actually would like to go underneath in the book, Khalil Gibran's book that is known as The Prophet. Khalil Gibran, who was born on January 6, 1883 and died in April 10, 1931, was a Lebanese artist, poet and writer. He was born in the town in the north of modern-day Lebanon. As a young man, he emigrated with his family to the United States, where he studied art and began his literary career, writing in both English and Arabic. In the Arab world, Gibran is regarded as a literary and political rebel. His romantic style was at the heart of a renaissance in modern Arabic literature, especially prose poetry, breaking away from the classical school. In Lebanon, he is still celebrated as a literary hero. He is chiefly known in the English-speaking world for his 1923 book, The Prophet, an early example of inspirational fiction, including a series of philosophical essays written in poetic English prose. So as we were narrating the ideas regarding Khalil Gibran, he was very famous. He was a writer from Lebanon who started writing at the very early stage in English and Arabic. Later on, he migrated to United States, and he became very famous. And his chief popularity lies in The Prophet. He became very famous because of The Prophet. Prophet is a magnum opus of Khalil Gibran. It is a very important book by the pen of Khalil Gibran. It is a collection of important assets, important elements related to human life. It is a philosophical representation of individual behavior. It is a poetic representation of ideas related to human life and his behavior. Prophet is written in such a style that it was as fresh as when it was written. It is as fresh even now. The relevance and the significance of The Prophet never goes down. It is very pertinent book in order to understand the human behavior, in order to teach the human behavior. Here we go for introduction of The Prophet. Gibran's magnum opus, The Prophet, published in 1923, is a partly autobiographical book which consists of 26 poetic essays. We find an excellent example of lyrical prose here, and one is reminded of the traditional romantic definition of essay, that an essay is a lyric in prose and that a perfect egoist is a perfect essayist. Al-Mustafa, the prominent character, the important character of The Prophet. The Prophet had spent 12 years of life in a foreign country and is about to board a ship in order to return to the isle of his birth. He is stopped by a group of people whom he teaches the mysteries of life. In fact, he unearths the mysteries of life. The resulting 26 sermons are divided to enlighten and emancipate the listeners. So, as we have understood that this is what actually expresses the intricate aspect of human life. Further, this is a very fine story. This is a very fine presentation in poetic prose. Critics call it a poetic prose. Because as a matter of fact, The Prophet you must have read it. The Prophet is written in the prosaic style. It is in prose. There is no doubt about it. But as soon as we start reading it, as soon as we go into the depth of the Prophet, we understand that as a matter of fact, the writing, the presentation of the Prophet is a poetic style. The Prophet is neither a novel nor a story book, but a series of philosophical, spontaneous expressions of a prophet. He does not forget the country he has lived in, but he is also conscious of his home. Therefore, he gives these sermons as a gift. Each part of it is his farewell gift to the people. His thoughts about love, marriage, children, and several of other issues are in the first part of about death in the last. So, Prophet, as we have discussed about it, it is neither a novel nor a storybook, but a series of philosophical and spontaneous expressions of the Prophet. Actually, it represents the ideas about the different elements related to human life. And because the people of Orphalese wanted to give a kind of farewell to Prophet, and therefore they represent their ideas, their questions. They ask their questions actually, and these questions were responded by Prophet, and these answers are very well noted down in the Prophet. The ideas are there about love, marriage, death, etc., etc. So, as a matter of fact, this Prophet represents a very beautiful picture of the different ideas like love, marriage, children, and different so many other ideas in a very beautiful way, in a very systematic way, and in a very fruitful way. Prophet. The Prophet is basically an exercise on human philosophy. Gibran's effort is to have a balance between the spiritual and physical, and he is extremely successful in his mission. The language he uses is spontaneous. The way he employs metaphors, similes, personifications makes one fall in love with the book, even if the content of the book is not pleasing to someone. He cannot leave the book because of its language. The entire tone and tenor of the sermons is soaked with sensual humility. He treats all the question confronting us with an almost human-like respect. The Prophet turns into a teacher who seems to be of this world. Look how positive, prophetic, and pragmatic is his advice about his love. He says, when love beckons to you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep. So, my dear friends, as we were talking about, as we were discussing about, it is basically a philosophy. It is basically a philosophy of the mind of Khalil Gibran. And that philosophy has been expressed, through the words, through the ideas, and through the pronunciation of the Prophet. The language is very precise and spontaneous. So many figures of speech have been used here. And this is where Khalil Gibran appeals to his readers. He makes every point clear, and in such a way that the readers feel surprised, totally mesmerized with the contents. Once any reader takes the text, he or she cannot leave the book unless he or she completes it. This is what is the beauty of Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. The Prophet is such a beautiful presentation in language that those who are not even interested in the contents will not like to leave the text because they are so much interested, because they are so much surprised, because they are so much mesmerized by the language. This is what is called the beauty. This is what is called the representation of the ideas by Khalil Gibran. The Prophet does not appear to be a book of philosophical discourses, dull, dreamy, and scholastic. Rather, it seems to be, and it is a bunch of prose lyrics, marked by its own peculiar melody, imagination, spontaneity, and conversational tone. See how nicely he describes freedom. His diction is superb, and one is forced to say that there cannot be a more beautiful, touching way of making words flow together. So, my dear friends, as we were talking earlier, that it is not only a philosophical discourse, it is not a text that where we are talking about the philosophical assets only, where we are talking in a monotonous tone, where we are talking in a very dull tone. No, this is not the case with Khalil Gibran's this book known as The Prophet. Whereas the book actually is written in a particular melody and melodious tone. It appeals, it appeals its readers. It presents the message, the meaning, the contents of Khalil Gibran's to the readers in a wonderful way, in a most conversational way. Here actually one thing will be very apt to mention that these points are presented in a touching way also. So this is where actually the beauty of Khalil Gibran's Prophet lies. Any in the grove of the temple and in the shadow of the citadel, I have been the freest among you bear their freedom as a yoke and a handcuff. And my heat bled within me. For you can only be free when even the desire of seeking freedom becomes a harness to you, and when you cease to speak of freedom as a goal and a fulfillment. My dear friends, we were talking that this is a story of the Prophet Al-Mustafa, who after residing so many years at one place is leaving that particular place, but people do not want to leave him. People develop so much of affection and attraction towards him that they do not want to leave him. And now, when actually the time of his farewell has come, the time of Al-Mustafa's farewell has come, now these people actually have gathered there in order to bid a farewell to Al-Mustafa. And then Al-Mustafa is experiencing and sharing his ideas towards many things. He says that the freedom has got the important role in your life, people of Orphalese. He addresses, Al-Mustafa addresses the people of Orphalese by saying them so, and says that freedom is very important element in your life. Unless you express it, unless you feel it, there won't be any freedom in your life. So, the message of Khalil Gibran about freedom is here expressed through the voice of Al-Mustafa, and this is how we go. Prophet. Khalil Gibran's views in the Prophet are for all. Not for particular generation, not for particular class, not for particular country, not for particular reason. They are as fresh, they are as eternal, for anybody can use them. This is what is the important message and the significance of the Prophet. And this is why the Prophet is very much recognized in the world literature. This is a true piece of global literature. In fact, the overall effort of the Prophet times, he is a thought-provoking sermonizer. One may agree or disagree with his views, but one cannot doubt the writer's honesty. To read the book is to experience peace. You are at peace with yourself. There is no plot, no characterization, but all this is soon forgotten when one goes into the spirit of the booklet's amazing styles. One feels fresh as we were talking. The book has been written in a wonderful way. We may agree or disagree about the contents, about his ideas, about different things. But one thing is very much sure, that no one can question the writer's honesty, the writer's point of view and his presentation of ideas. Number one, Number two, there is no many characters. There is no plot, as a matter of fact. There is no story. But even then, as soon as we go into the deep, we understand, we feel that these things, these characters, these plots, these other things which are needed for a novel, for a drama, for a particular piece of literature, these things do not do anything here, or they do not hamper the frequency, the flow of this text, which is studied under today, that is prophet. It is a very amazing piece. Actually, there are so many topics. On the topics, as we have discussed, Al-Mustafa, when he was leaving the place, Orphalese, he started speaking on particular topic. And then he gave his ideas on that particular topic. And people listened to him and tried to understand and assimilate those ideas in his own life. Later on, people started asking particular questions on particular topic. And then he started answering those particular questions in his own tone, in his own, through his own experience. And I have chosen for you some important topics, some important elements, some important subjects which were narrated by Al-Mustafa. People started asking questions, and the first question was on love. And then Al-Mustafa responded. Al-Mustafa answered, my dear friends, Al-Mustafa answered the question of love in his own style, in his own manner. And he says, love is the greatest emotion of life. It is impossible to define love, though we all love. Khalil Gibran speaks of love as a panacea. He says, it is not a fun. It is something to be experienced, not to be seen. He asks us to listen to love. It is full of tears and cheers. It gives life, but it also demands life. Love in its supreme form is all dedication and with no desires. So as we were talking, my dear friends, Khalil Gibran says that love is a very beautiful feeling. Love is the most important feeling of human life. And Khalil Gibran says that love can solve most of the problems of life. It is a healer. It can solve many more problems, he says. Love is not a fun. It is not a funny thing in life. It is a very important thing in life that has to be experienced, my dear friends. He says that it can't be seen, but it has to be experienced, it has to be felt, and it has to be imparted in such a way that there should not be any desire to get. He says that it is a mixture of tears and cheers, my dear friends. He says that it gives life, but at the same time, it demands life also. So it is not as simple as we think. Love is the supreme kind of dedication, and there should not be any desires. Then later on, the people of Orphalese asked, what do you understand about marriage? Father, please tell us something about on marriage. People asked Al-Mustafa, and Al-Mustafa very liberally answered, and he said, marriage is a great institution. Marriage is a great institution, my dear friends. It helps to put a system in place. Gibran tells us that we are born of a union. Marriage is a union between the two bodies, nay, two souls. It is a bond, a sacrament that goes on. Marriage is not surrender, but the parties must maintain their individuality. So, he was very unique in his ideas on marriage, my dear friends. My dear friends, he was very particular about his ideas. He was very honest about his ideas. And he says that marriage is like an institution. He compares in the text, you will see it in the text. He compares the text and he says that marriage is like two pillars. And both of the pillars support the same roof, but still the gap exists between both of the pillars. The gap still exists both of the pillars. Let the wind of heaven flow between both of you. So this is what he says. He says that marriage is not the union of two bodies. Very clearly he says, my dear friends, very clearly he says that it is not the union of two bodies, my dear friends. Whereas it is the union of two souls. It is a bond. It is a bond of feelings that goes on. It is not a surrender. It is not a surrender. Whereas both the individuals have to keep up their own individuality. They need not sacrifice their individuality. That's what he says. And further, people started asking him about children. People were very much keen to know that what Al-Mustafa thinks about children. And then Al-Mustafa spoke on children. Gibran sounds a note of caution to parents by saying that your children are not your children. They are, according to him, life's longing for himself. Parents see themselves as their creator, but they have not really created them. They can be the source. We love our children, but we must give them enough space to develop their own thoughts. This is a solid piece of advice given by the writer, which is very useful, particularly for the Indian parents. Gibran says, and Al-Mustafa speaks, my dear friends, and he says, your children are not your children. Very clearly, Al-Mustafa says to the people of Orphalese that they are not your children, whereas they are the children of your desires. They are the children of your longing for life. They have come on their own. They are for you, but you cannot impose your feelings on them. You cannot impose your ideas on them. You cannot make them do your things always. They have got their own way. They are your children, but you have to give them enough space. They are your children, but you have to give them enough space. You have to make them realize that you are their parents, but you can't decide their ways. And then people started asking him about giving, because people are very much interested, and many a times they feel that they get a kind of pleasure, they get a kind of an enjoyment, my dear friends. So they asked, what do you think, our father, on giving? Gibran is very particular about it, and he says, if one gives his possession, it is not at all significant. It is when you give yourself, you become a real giver. If anything is given with a view to gaining publicity, it can be called an investment, but not a real charity. Usually the rich donate so much, but their motive is different. They want recognition in return. The poor who have little money and donate it for any worth cause are the real donors. They believe in life and the bounty of life, and their coffer will never be empty. He also asks never to boast of charity and follow the example of the trees. The trees give fruits to all, and the cows milk to everyone, irrespective of their stature. Khalil Gibran says that when you are giving your possession, you are not giving anything at all. Because you want to get some kind of publicity, my dear friends. In charity, you are not giving up yourself. And when these rich people donate, their motive is different. That is why that is not at all a charity. That can't be called a charity according to the Gibran, the Prophet. And as a matter of fact, because they have to be indiscriminate while giving something. They have to be indiscriminate because the cow gives milk. The tree gives fruits, and both of them do not make any discrimination. So this is how the life goes. And then people started asking, Father, what do you think about work? And then he said that to be idle is to miss the beauty of nature. An idle man never listens to the music of life. God has made us to work. Work gives us knowledge. When we work, we realize the supreme aim of life and feel the pleasure in our assignment. So whenever you work, do it with full of love. This is the appeal of the poet. Sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, he says. An idle man never enjoys the fruits of life, never enjoys the music of life, my dear friends, because when you work the deeds of the God. You work in the honor of the God, my dear friends, because work gives us knowledge. When we work, we understand the aims and objectives of our life. We understand the supreme aims that are professed by God for us. And therefore, he says that when we work, we must work with full enthusiasm. We must work with full love, with full energy, with full compassion and dedication and determination, my dear friends. He says that this is what gives us energy, my dear friends. And he further says very clearly that we have to sow the seeds with all tenderness, my dear friends. And we have to harvest, we have to reap the harvest with fullest enjoyment, with full freedom and enjoyment, my dear friends. So he says that there should be a kind of dedication, there should be a kind of an enthusiasm and energy. Only then we can do something in the service of God, and only then we can achieve those aims and objectives, my dear friends, that are professed by God for us, according to Khalil Gibran. And then people started asking him, what do you think about joy and sorrow, our Father? What do you think? And then Al-Mustafa replies, because Gibran sees life in totality, and life has both joys and sorrows. Our joy is full of sorrow. Sadness and happiness are inseparable from each other. You feel the birth of joy only when your cup of sorrow is full to the brim. I remember, my dear friends, some very famous lines of a great romantic poet, P.B. Shelley, and he says, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? If winter comes, can spring be far behind? There he notifies the important attention. There he says that if there are some bad times in our life, if there is a night in our life, if there are hope less in our life, definitely, my dear friends, the day will come when there will be brightness. There will be a colorful day in our life. That's what exactly Khalil Gibran says, and he says that life is full of joys and sorrows, my dear friends. If there are sorrows in life, then definitely there are enjoyments also in our life, my dear friends, because it is filled with joy. At one hand, there are joys, and other hands, there are sorrows, my dear friends. Our joy is full of our sorrow. Very clearly he says, when there is an enjoyment in your life, do not forget that sorrow is waiting for you. And when there is sorrow in your life, the joy is also waiting for you, my dear friends. Because these sadness and happiness, they are inseparable from each other. They are entangled. They are together always. And we have to feel it. And then people started asking about clothes. And Gibran says that our clothes cover our beauty, but not our ugliness. They preserve our privacy, but also enchain us. Clothes protect us from the vagaries of nature, but forget not that the earth delights to feel your bone, feet, and the winds long to play with your hair. He says. Philosophically, Gibran says that clothes can cover our beauty. Clothes can cover our beauty, but they can never cover our ugliness. They can never cover our ugliness. They preserve our privacy, but they enchain also. They chain us in a kind of shell that is known as clothes. And we have to see that, you see, sometimes these winds also cannot touch our body because of the clothes and because of the certain clothes and other things. And then people started asking about on beauty. Father, please tell us something about beauty. And he says, beauty is a relative term. What is beauty to one may be jarring to the other. Beauty is an ecstasy, a heart inflamed and a soul enchanted, my dear friends. It lies in the eyes of the beholder, to quote Gibran. Beauty is life when life unveils her holy face. But you are life and you are the veil. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror. But you are eternity and you are the mirror. He says, very clearly he says that beauty is a relative term. Beauty can be having different philosophical representation and definitions to different people. It varies from person to person because it has got so many ideas. Beauty, because sometimes some people feel that it is an ecstasy. Sometimes people feel that it is an inward beauty and outward beauty. Sometimes people say that there is no such term that is called beauty. There is no such term, my dear friends, that is beauty, because the beauty lies in the eyes of beholder, my dear friends. And Gibran also very beautifully says, beauty is life when life unveils her holy face. But you are life and you are the veil. He says that beauty is there. Beauty is there in our life. Beauty is there in every part of our life. And beauty is there in the veil. And beauty is there in our life. And beauty is gazing ourselves. And beauty is an eternal thing. Beauty is an eternal thing, my dear friends. So, these were the eternal ideas about different topics expressed by Khalil Gibran through the voice of Al-Mustafa in this very memorable piece of literature that is The Prophet. Now here we go for summary. And we can understand The Prophet is a valuable book which enriches our life and enhances our spirituality, irrespective of our beliefs and religion. The Western world may have some reservations about its style and its fundamental belief. Khalil Gibran's writing is highly oriental, rich with metaphors which may appear artificial and jarring to a Westerner. Therefore, the book appeals to the Eastern readers more. He finds an affinity with the author, still but agrees with the views of a critic. If you don't like it because of its style or its fundamental belief, you will still find it worthy to deepen your knowledge about Eastern philosophy and spirituality. My dear friends, as we were talking about Prophet, it is a very famous book that talks about the different beliefs. It talks about the different religious traits. It talks about the different kind of reservations and understanding of different people, along with their fundamental belief systems, my dear friends. We can also very easily understand, and I hope that you must have read the text and you must have seen the originality in the ideas of the Prophet. And you will find that there may be some contrary ideas about the liking. Westerner people may not like it, and Easterners will like it. But even then, no one can deny about the relevance and the significance of the contents which are expressed in the book, my dear friends. And, my dear friends, the style and the representation of this particular book that has been represented in an amicable way that deepens the knowledge, the understanding, and particular knowledge of this subject in a great manner. So these were the ideas about the Prophet by a famous writer, Khalil Gibran. I hope you must have enjoyed the text and the representations and the different ideas. Thank you very much.